All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Today, we're talking about the emergence of the gig economy, what it means for the workforce, and the specialist versus generalist argument. I think it's really important. We're all going to be in the middle of this gig and precarious work economy. Whether we want or not, it doesn't really matter. So sit back, grab yourself your favorite beverages. Let's get at her. All right, thanks again for joining us here on the podcast, and we appreciate all your feedback over the 5 parts of the Roadmap to Resilience that we recently released. That was our opening the kimono moment. It's an old boss of mine, Brigadier General Keith. I'll leave it at that. Brilliant individual, and he used to use the phrase, every once in a while you need to open your kimono and show everything. And we decided here at Preparedness Labs Incorporated, the parent company to the podcast Inside My Canoe Head, that it's just better to give out the best possible information we have for free to the population, to package it up in an easy-to-find methodology, provide it to them free of charge as a community service, instead of trying to package it in some neat little thing where I could draw some income out of it. So we went ahead and did the research, put together the Roadmap to Resilience, a 5-part series. It's available on the Substack. It's available on the YouTube channel, and it's available on this podcast. If you drop over to our website, preparednesslabs.ca, the link to everything is there. It'll remain free of charge, and in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have a free, enhanced, downloadable document that'll have the same things. So if you're looking for a one-stop shop, you can download, throw on your computer, get offline. We're going to have that up in a couple of weeks. It's just going through a design process right now. And the intent here is we want to make sure we provide the best possible free information we can to the clients out there and everyone as part of our public service to bring preparedness and risk management ideas to the grand population. However, today I think it's really important because I've been spending some time and reading about and understanding the emergence and the changes in the current economy beyond what we've talked about before in tariffs, what we've talked about in the political and economic disruptions that are happening, but in the changing of work. And when I mean about work, I mean employment, the place where you earn an income. Now, you generally in life have 3 choices. You can choose to be a professional, which means you're inside a regulated profession like a lawyer, an electrician, a member of the military, something that has standards to get in, standards to stay, requirements. Do you have certain training and maintain certain training standards, take regular ongoing training, etc. So you have a choice to go into a profession. You also have the choice to go into salaried work, which is simply you taking your skills and exchanging it for an hourly wage that can be permanent positions, part-time positions, whatever they may be, but it's salaried work, right? You're basically changing your time for money. And the last part is entrepreneurial work. And entrepreneurial work is where you decide that you're going to solve a pain that exists in society. You've identified an issue that people are having trouble with. You've found a reasonable way to solve it. And you're going to create a marketing campaign to try to persuade people to exchange money with you to solve the problem. So basically, those are your 3 choices. That's it. There's really nothing else you can do. But within those 3 choices, what we've seen in a change in work is the emergence of gig economy. Now, gig economy heralding. The name is a heralding back to the music industry of before, and it's today's now. If you're a house band or you have a bunch of friends that have a band and you get together, you get a gig at a local pub, right? You get a couple $100 for playing at a local pub. Hopefully you can sell some CDs that night, get some tips from the patrons, and you make a little money and you get to enjoy. So the gig economy has been actually around for decades, but it's mainly been in very, very specific areas like the music industry, where most of the people in the band that's playing at your pub Saturday night, pretty much everybody you're looking at is not making their living in this band, right? They have a job. This is what they do as their quote unquote side hustle for fun. They're passionate about it. They make a little money on the side and they're having themselves a great and wonderful life. That is what the gig economy essentially began as. And now as we start to see the power of the internet, and this is one of the side benefits, depending on your view, benefits or not benefit, of having a globally connected society is we start to realize that employment is expensive for a company, right? Whether you're a public sector and private sector, hiring an employee is a very, very expensive thing to do, right? You're making a long-term commitment to one human. You have to provide that human a lot of benefits, et cetera. And I know the socio-economic warriors out there will counter this, but it's an expensive undertaking with all of the costs that go along with hiring an employee above the salary, all the wage requirements, all the workplace safety requirements, all those things that are logically and should be in place, health benefits, family benefits, time off, all these other things. It's very expensive to hire an employee. And what has been merging out in the gig economy, and what really started launching it, was transportation platforms. We saw things like Lyft and Uber start. And today, I was reading a recently report in Global Velocity, an online company program, and it said about, today it's still about 80% of the gig economy globally is grounded in the transportation industry, right? So it's people driving for Lyft or driving for DoorDash or driving for Skip the Dishes, Uber, or something along that lines. But that in Western societies, it has taken hold in almost every service-related industry, right? So if you think about a business that has core and non-core activities. So if I own a business, and I do, I'll use, for example, my business. My business is providing preparedness education and risk management education to rational people, right? I use the tagline of non-apocalyptic, evidence-based preparedness and risk management education for rational people, right? So the in-house, the core services of my company, which is that education piece and the knowledge base in the risk management knowledge and the preparedness knowledge, we keep in-house, right? That's owned in-house. It's owned by the employees. It's owned by me, the owner, and it retains in-house. But all the other supporting systems, from IT to podcast hosting to marketing, they're all contracted out, right? I don't have any interest, no matter how much money the company makes, of hiring an employee to do marketing, right? When there are brilliant human beings out there who are absolute wizards in marketing, and I can simply hire them for very, very specific tasks to do my Meta ads, my Google ads, my LinkedIn ads, my X ads, whatever they may be, or to scale a reel and short program. Or, for example, you have Blaze AI is another program. You have High Level, which is another program that does your YouTube shorts and things like that. And there are some bigger programs out there where I can, there's one out there that I won't mention because they have a really different opinion depending on who you deal with. They run pretty expensive, $400 or $500 a month. But what I do is I can walk around with this program. Now, just imagine this: if you're a business owner like me, and what your success is generally based on your ability to present yourself as the expert in the field, the one that people should trust, and you want to build trust with your clients so that when they have a need, they come to you because you're seen as a trusted expert, right? Very, very important. So I can walk around my house, hold up my smartphone, and I can record a 10-minute video and soundbite about something really, really important that's going on in the world today, and I can upload it to the program. What this online program then does is it creates reels, it creates shorts, it creates a podcast episode, it creates written Substack articles. The AI behind that, and it's not perfect, it does make mistakes, but the AI behind that creates all of that for me, and I don't have to do anything but pay a fee. If I was to try to hire humans to do that task, the amount of money I would have to spend would be exponentially larger than the cost of the supported program. And this is where the gig economy is moving, right? It's often referred to as precarious employment because that's a contrast to, the pre-2000 model of where I'm going to figure out the industry that I want to work in. I'm going to go get a formal education in it. I'm going to apply to a big corporation for an entry-level position. I'm then going to move up vertically and laterally throughout this company or maybe across a couple companies in the industry throughout my life as I work and build my portfolio and expertise into higher level positions. That was the pre-2000 world, right? That's the way the world was designed, right? And the economy was modeled. Now that the internet has changed that, for example, when I'm seeking, and I do actively seek marketing folks, so please, not marketing folks, people who do paid advertisements for me. Please don't flood my inbox, but go ahead if you will. I probably get 20 or 30 DMs a day from people promising that they can do wizardry with social media. And when I check on it, everything is an @Gmail275 account. I'm like, sure, bud. Yeah, you're the expert and you have a Gmail address in your business. Yeah, sorry. If you're not willing to invest in an online business and have a business address that's not through Workforce or Salesforce.com, forget it. You're going dans la poubelle, as the French would say. But when I'm looking for that, right, I don't care where your education is, right? I could care less whether you have any formal education in the marketing, sales, and advertising field. That's pointless to me. What I want to know is, do you have a history, and can you demonstrate to me the skill sets to put together a successful sales ad campaign that it'll deliver for my company, right? I need this niche hired. I need this niche provided in my company. I don't need an employee. I don't want an employee that I have to pay a bunch of money to, that I have to pay benefits from. I need somebody who is really, really smart in this niche area to provide this very important service to me that I will pay a very large amount of money for, and that I get exactly what I want. They get paid. They have 20 or 25 clients, and they can generate $250,000 a year income, because they're an expert in the field, because they do a very specific niche thing. And I wrote if you follow me over on Substack, there's a Substack article that I wrote on this, talking about the specialist versus the generalist in the gig economy. And the argument is, based upon statistics, not my opinion. Again, this is a research-based podcast, so I just don't spew poo-poo out that I think is right and I have no proof for it. Based upon evidence from corporations, from interviews, and from surveys, what people are looking for is a niche expert, not a generalist. But what often happens when you start to think about, hey, listen, I want to go out on my own, because what the current model is, and what we see in a lot of industries, is people still get the education. They get a job with a company to some degree that they can find. And then what they end up doing is, after a couple of years, and they just learn how the industry works, the ins and outs of what people are looking for, they jettison very quickly into the independent contracting space, right? As a collective with a couple of friends, or independently on their own, they go out there and then they start operating that niche. And what they're doing is they're taking the lessons and then they're trying to become that expert. The problem is the first default position that everybody takes is, I'm a generalist. And I'm going to use the field that I'm familiar with and what this podcast is grounded in the emergency management field, right? So we see this often where somebody will leave a position with, the Texas Emergency Management Agency or FEMA right now, because they seem to be shedding a bunch of people, and they'll start an emergency management consulting. And they'll say, hi, I'm here to help you with everything about emergency management, right? Whether you want to talk about mitigation, preparedness, response, or recovery, I'm your individual. And if you want to do business continuity planning, I've taken a course in that too, and here's my certification. What you're telling me is you're very good at absolutely nothing. You're telling me you know a lot about, a little bit about of a lot of things, but you're not an expert. Because, and I've had this debate, and I haven't had this debate. I got this education from an incredibly smart man named Grayson, who works in the healthcare industry in Canada. And he's an emergency manager, and he had the best comparison to this, so I don't want to take credit whatsoever for it, is being an expert in emergency management is like being an expert in healthcare. That means you can be a doctor, nurse, x-ray technician, lab tech, and you can fix the operating room equipment when it breaks, right? You can't be an expert in healthcare just as much as you cannot be an expert in emergency management. You can be a generalist in the field, which means you know a little bit about everything, and you've been exposed maybe over a 25-year career to a whole bunch of different things, but somewhere in there you are the expert. where your competency lies, where your skill set resides, you are an expert. But people don't sell themselves as that, right? They don't sell themselves as, for example, here, my expertise is in 2 or 3 very specific fields, right? I can comment in general about a lot of things in emergency management. I've studied it for years. I'm a professor in the field, but I am not an expert in the field, right? And I laugh when people say they're experts in emergency management, but whatever, leave them to their own devices. I am an expert in emergency preparedness communications at the municipal level. I am an expert in building community resilience using social capital and human relationships. And I am an expert in looking at resiliency in small micro businesses. There you go. That's my expertise. Now, I have a lot of experience in other areas and I can offer commentary, but I have very specific areas where I will argue toe-to-toe, and I will go toe-to-toe with any other human on the face of this earth in those sandboxes, right? I've carved out a couple of very little, very, very tiny specific sandboxes, but if you're in that sandbox, you're playing with my tools, and I'm going to come, right? Like, that's my space. Feel free to jump into it, but know that I am the expert in that space. And that's not arrogance. An expert, remember, expert is not a self-declared statement. You are an expert in the field because you've been anointed so by others in the field, right? So you can't stand up and say you're an expert unless other people have anointed you. So over my, 15-year career, 14 or 15-year career in this field, I've been noted as an expert in those specific areas, but a generalist voice in many others, right? And so I'm very clear that, you're in my, as the Navy would say, and my naval friends out there would get this, you're in my part ship, which is my world. But there's a lot of the ship I don't understand, but I know the people that do, right? So if you came to me and you said you want help with grant writing for preparedness grants out of public sector institutions, I would say, hey, I know a couple of things about that, but trust me, I know 2 or 3 people who are absolute experts in this field. And for example, Rebecca is consulting out of Cochrane, Alberta, and Canmore. She's an absolute brilliant expert in grants application and working with Indigenous communities in Canada. I wouldn't try to do that work. That's not my expertise. And if anybody came to me with that kind of work, I would simply direct them her way and say, hey, listen, she's brilliant. She knows this world. She'll get it done. And the same thing is reciprocal. And I've gotten people who sent me, like, for example, I got a call from a CBC producer to come on the show Marketplace because they were chatting with somebody else who were looking for an expert in the field to talk about a certain thing. And that individual, Jody, just said, hey, I actually know the person you're looking for, and here's his name. They called me, and next thing you know, I'm on the 2023 season debut in October of CBC's Marketplace as a disaster expert because I have been known as a niche expert. So what I'm trying to tell you is the economy is changing around you. And if you're in the professional space, then the professional space is something distinctly different. That has an entrepreneurial asset where you can either work for a firm as a lawyer or go as an independent entrepreneur lawyer. But to be a lawyer, there's very, very constrained requirements as such as there should be in a profession. If you're an entrepreneur, you're out there getting after it anyhow. If you are a salaried person who earns a salary as a government employee or a corporate employee, and you're looking to go out on your own in some type of entrepreneurial world, I'm going to strongly suggest that you do so quickly because the field is moving on. If you're sitting in a graphic design department of a large company, I would be worried right now because there's some great businesses online, and there's a couple, if you look on YouTube, there's a $1 Million Solo Business YouTube channel that talks to a bunch, and one of them is an individual, and I use this in my Substack article, where this individual who's just happens to be exceptionally good at graphic design. You know, your standard graphic design programs from Apple, Final Cut Pro, and things like that. That he's just a brilliant man at it, and he loves to do it. Right? He's just exceptionally good at it. Forget the qualifications. Right? So he puts companies on retainers for $5,000 US a month. Right? That's 60 grand US a year. They have unlimited access for any number of design requests, except they can only have one active at a time. Right? So he's getting $60,000 a year from this company, and he has, 20 something companies doing it, and it works out to be about, $1.2 million a year is what he gets in U.S. revenue as a solo entrepreneur, because he has 20 companies that are on a $5,000 a month retainer, because none of these companies want to hire a full-time graphic designer, but because he is so good at something he's passionate about, he's turned it into money. He only has 20 clients. He doesn't want more than that. So each one of them is allowed to have one thing active, and he gives them all I think it's a 4-day turnaround. So once you click send on the thing, and there's no communication, he uses an online platform for people to enter the requirements. So he doesn't answer emails. He doesn't answer calls. The client just puts something of what they need into his form that he has. Then he goes and he creates it. He sends it to them 3 or 4 days later. And then they make changes and they go back and forth. And he services 20 clients from the living room of his apartment. And he grosses $1.2 million and has zero advertising cost, because through name recognition and through previous experience, he has all the contract work he wants. That's the difference between somebody sitting and doing the entrepreneurial piece and somebody sitting in a graphic design position in a major corporation. Because those options are available out there, not all, but more and more of these non-core service positions are being moved out to the contract economy. Now, whether we agree with this or not, this is not a socio-economic fight about livable wage. This is not a socio-economic discussion about whether we should make and force full-time work to happen. This is what's happening in the economy. If you are in a non-core service in a corporation, you are at high risk of being gigged, as the saying goes, and being punted out into the precarious employment, right? So if I'm an accountant in an accounting firm, it's a core service. I'm not going anywhere unless I'm not good at what I do or the company's in trouble. I provide the core service that the company offers. But if you're sitting in a position for a company that's not a core service, your position is at risk. Maybe yes, maybe no, depending on the corporate culture, but it's at risk for moving out. So if you're not willing to enter the gig economy, at least with your toenail, to try something a little on freelance the side, and the Global Velocity report said in 2025, 50% of U.S. workforce will have done at least one for-hire freelance piece of work, and it's estimated that 36% of the U.S. workforce by 2030 will be gig economy, will be 100% on their own entrepreneurial. So it's going there, and it doesn't matter whether we like it or not. It doesn't matter whether we think it's appropriate or not. It's about whether you learn how to be successful in the gig economy now when you have regular employment, or you're forced to learn how to do that after your current employment is terminated. The reason I bring this up is because I've been part of many discussions about the future of emergency management, the future of work and emergency management, and how work gets done. And part of the issue is really wanted to hammer on the point that you are really smart in some niche. You have some level of expertise, something that you're absolutely passionate about and you're exceptionally good at, that has a contract value worth to it, that you can go toe-to-toe with pretty much any other human, and you'd be happy to do intelligence battle. We're not talking about fisticuffs or pugilism, just an intelligence battle in the space, right? You've got to learn how to market that and how to present it to society, because you very well may be put in the position. And if you're put in the position of having to become an entrepreneur by force and not by choice because companies aren't hiring, then you're going to be in an interesting position of where you're going to have to try to figure out how to do it at the same time you need to be earning an income. My suggestion to you and the purpose of this podcast is this is where the economy is going. This is where it's largely moving, other than the public service. And the public service in every country is looking at some type of contraction because of the state of the economy and recession. How are you going to earn an income if 50% or more of the U.S. economy is going to be gig by 2030? How are you going to do that? Or are you going to simply demand to be part of the less than 50% who remain in full-time tenured positions? That's not the norm. You're going to become a statistical outlier, which makes you in a more precarious position to be punted into the gig economy. So at least we're suggesting that you get your toe in it, or at least you understand how it works and how, if you were forced to, you would create an entrepreneurial enterprise to sell your niche capability in a client, in a B2B or a B2C model, so where you can be successful. That is a skill set that you can learn now. It costs you no money. There's hundreds of voices on the internet. I'm not going to tell you to go listen to, but I listen to Alex Hormozi, Dan Coe, Chris Williamson, and a number of other experts in this area. So find something that you're really good at, find something that you're passionate about, and figure out if there's an economic model for that. And I think the answer to that question is going to be, yeah, absolutely, there is. But you're going to be in a difficult position if you're forced to do it than when you can do it now, when you have the time and space. And one last thing that I'll add, and I had this in the Substack, that I was speaking to a recruiter, came to talk to a bunch of transitioning veterans as part of this group that I'm in. And he spoke about how a lot of the hiring is done. Because we see a lot of comments now online where, people apply to 90 jobs, 100 jobs, 200 jobs. They have the qualification asked for, but they're simply not getting hired and they don't understand it. And this was a view the individual offered. Now, I don't know the degree to which this is frequent in the hiring world, but his argument is that most of the positions are hired for outside of public offerings. So what they'll do, especially if they use a talent management company, is they will use LinkedIn. They will search LinkedIn for people who follow the company, for people who have open communication lines of connection on there. So if their phone numbers and email addresses are clearly on their LinkedIn, and then they'll look at their LinkedIn, and if it clearly shows their qualifications, and they'll use AI to sweep across LinkedIn and in the general area where they are to basically say, who is the applicant pool that exists that follows and shows an interest in the company, has the skills that we want, and is in the area that we want, right? Because let's not get into remote work, but companies are going back to the office. Again, whether you like it or not, nobody really cares. This is what they're doing. So they would search LinkedIn to get that talent pool, and then they would actually invite the people to apply. So the company out of blue invites you because based upon of a search and then a human valuation on the search. They do the human valuation because sometimes AI does some wonky things right now. It's early days. So a human does go through what the AI comes up with as the applicant pool to make sure that it makes sense. And then they send out requests to see if you're interested in applying for the job. When they put out the public offering, when they put out the, hey, I'm hiring for this position, what they're looking for is two things. Primarily, they're looking to build a statistical model and help the AI learn to who's out there, what their CVs are, and what skill sets. So if I'm applying for a position, if I'm offering a position, and I think this is what the qualifications are, and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people send in CVs, then AI is going to go over that CV and they're going to say, hey, listen, I can bump the qualifications from a bachelor's degree because 92% of the applicants that are looking at this job have a master's degree. So I don't need a master's, but if 92% have it, I'm going to throw in a master's degree as a requirement. I'm not going to pay any more money for the position, but adding all this CV and uploading all these things informs and learns the AI. But what they're also looking for is the statistical outlier because, again, AI is not perfect and talent searches aren't perfect. So they're looking for somewhere out there's going to be an individual that was missed in the LinkedIn search, or they don't have an active LinkedIn profile, but they're in the area and they are an ideal candidate, right? So to make sure that we don't miss those are still useful tools for the public job opening. But this kind of informing, hey, listen, I don't know how many companies are doing this, but this would be logical and provide some form of information as to why companies are, putting out these calls for jobs, and then well-qualified individuals are applying and getting nothing back. And so this may be an answer to that. It may not be, but I thought it was very informative. And so basically the evidence that the recommendation for this individual was, if you're looking to work in an industry, get on LinkedIn, build your profile, be professional, be present on the platform, have your contact information there, have your education up to date, follow, like, and engage with the content of the companies for which you want to work for, and that will tell the algorithm that you're out there. And again, what I'm trying to give is advice based upon what I've been told. This is not my expertise. So I'm giving advice based on what I've been told by people who are experts in the field. And again, it doesn't matter whether you think this is appropriate. It doesn't matter whether you think with using job applications online to gather CV-related data to inform AI search bots. I don't care if you think that's ethical. I don't care if you think that's right or not, because this is what's happening out there. I don't know the degree to which it is, and I'm not accusing great industries of doing this. I'm just saying that is part of what's going on out there. And so if you understand how the world is working, if you understand how the economy is changing, you can then make the conscious choice to change with it, or you can sit and complain about it changing in a way you don't like and you don't think is correct. Which one of those is likely to lead to a greater probability of you earning a healthy income? The choice is yours. It's up to you, my friends. Choose wisely. So thanks again for joining us this week at Inside My Canoe Head. We appreciate your support, your ongoing love and following. If you want to do something to help this podcast out, just share it. Share it with a friend. Tell somebody that you know that this is a really interesting place to be. There's no advertising here. I don't make any money. I don't get paid by the downloads or anything ridiculous like that. This is our open public service to those who are interested in understanding the latest and neat information in preparedness and risk management space, which is what season 14 is all about. So thanks again for joining us. Take care. Stay safe.